Hey guys, Brian O'Day, one of the pastors of Pillar Church of Jacksonville and executive director of the Praetorian Project. I'm joined today with Joshua Brown, one of the pastors of Pillar Church of Topsail. What we want to talk about today is really a unique opportunity that the Department of Defense has come out with that will help us see active duty service members transition to become full-time vocational pastors. It's crazy that the Department of Defense would come up with a program to help us do that. We want to do that as Praetorian Project and our churches, but it's just an amazing program. So anyway, we're going to tell our story a little bit. So I transitioned off active duty 9 years ago. I was a member of Pillar Church of Dumfries and felt called into the ministry, felt called into full-time vocational church planting and pastoral work. And I was trained and mentored by Clint Clifton and the other pastors there, and went through a process to step straight off of active duty into full-time pastoral ministry. There was no break. There was no on-ramp financially. I was on active duty and trying to raise support and do all those things simultaneously and plant a church and mentally process and work through my transition. And there was really no buffer. I took 1 month of terminal leave, and that was really all I had. But there's a new program that you're certainly taking advantage of. And so maybe walk through a little bit, what's your timeline? And when we bump into this crazy word called Skillbridge, we'll stop and talk about what that is.
Okay. So for me, it was very similar story.
Yeah.
So I was active duty military, and then started attending Pillar Church of Jacksonville, and for a few years was being mentored by you and Jonathan Davis, and helping me through the process of going into pastoral ministry. And as the years were coming along, and as God was working and doing what God does, he was calling us into full-time ministry. And we didn't know what that looked like. Clint Clifton's book was very helpful as well as we walked through that together. But we were being called into ministry. We saw an opportunity. So myself and Paul Bailey came down to Topsail and started Pillar Church of Topsail. And at the same time, we were looking into the Skillbridge program and trying to figure out what that might look like for us, specifically for me.
Yeah. So,
and here's the program.
2 active duty service members were sent out as the planting pastors for Pillar Topsail.
Correct.
You're one of those guys.
And Paul actually knew he was being deployed in the next year.
Right.
When we went and started, which was
whole different challenge that we're working through.
But so
November of 2020, we sent you out. Pillar Jack sent you out, you and Paul and your family and a few other families, to start the church. You were still on active duty. You planted the church. Good news about having 2 active duty pastors is you don't have to pay them, and so the church was able to get by on a shoestring budget. But at some point, you've got to provide for your family, and you were called into full-time pastoral ministry as your second career. And so you did that from November 2020 until this past April, where you fully and officially started your transition and retiring from the Marine Corps. Okay, and you started this program called Skillbridge. Okay. So from April of this past year until October of this year,
September.
6 months. Yeah. 6 months. So April to September, right? 6 months. What happens while you're on this Skillbridge?
Well, first, like, the Skillbridge program itself is meant for any service member getting out of service and transitioning into any job.
Great point. This is not just for pastors. That's why the DoD did it. They're trying to get people hired.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's pipe fitters and plumbers and
everything.
Airstreams, renewables.
Amazon does it. Google does it. Lowe's does it. Lots of big companies you've heard of.
Right. So this is no different. So essentially, we applied for it. It got approved. And then starting in April, upon my retirement and transition, instead of getting the 30 days of terminal leave like you were talking about, for me, it's the 6-month period of time where I'm being paid as an active duty military member.
Yep.
I have all the same benefits. I have all the same everything as if I'm going to work every day for the Marine Corps. The difference is I am interning to become a full-time or vocational pastor under the internship program through Pillar Church of Jacksonville.
Absolutely. Great. So you are a church planting intern with basically a 6-month apprenticeship that is paid for by your active duty paycheck.
Correct.
Which gives you an on-ramp, a cushion to learn and continue the internship and apprenticeship that we've been doing for years now, right? And we get to focus on it. We just we're finishing up our meeting this week about your apprenticeship, internship, whatever you want to call it. And you're doing support raising right now. So if you want to support a young church plant in Eastern North Carolina, call Joshua Brown. Reply to this email wherever you see it. And so you're able to do all those things while you're not having to do it. It was always tough, like, hey, we need money. When do you need it? Like 3 months ago, because I'm trying to feed my family here. And so this really creates some of that on-ramp for you and for the church and really everything else. So it's a great program. Amazing program, honestly, for which big passion of ours is to see veterans transition out of the military well, no matter what they want to do. So you want to work for one of those big companies, or you want to be a pipe fitter or electrician or whatever the case is. It's a great program, but it's uniquely helping us to see active duty service members transition into full-time pastoral ministry. And I would say any vocational ministry as well could do this type of a program. So if you were called to, international missions, or to work for a missions organization, or to go not into like pastor church planting staff, but any type of staff on a church, you could do this type of internship and apprenticeship. And I'm just so excited about this. Like, I literally tell everybody about it. You were the guy that told me, like, I was excited about it before I connected it to church, and Josh was like starting his transition, and he's like, hey, I think we could do Skillbridge, like, for church planting. And I was like, boom, a light bulb went off. And so now I tell everybody about it, and now I'm making a video about it. So
yeah, it's a great program. And it honestly, like, somebody transitioning out of the Marine Corps into any line of work, it's going to be a hard transition. It's a vastly different world.
Absolutely.
And to transition into ministry or anything to deal with church leadership or anything really, you have a lot of the skills to do it as a military member.
Right.
But to make that transition, it is a very different world in the civilian world than it is in the military. So to have that longer on-ramp, to have that cushion, to have that time to transition, but also that time to learn your new trade. And to develop processes and how you're going to do things when you are fully transitioned out. It is a huge, wonderful benefit. So awesome. And I know everybody else's story is different. Ours was, we had already started the church, and it gave us time and cushion to like get in a space where we can grow our church well. God grows his church well, but you know what I'm saying. But for other people, it might be more of, hey, I'm getting ready to get out, and I'm just starting this, and timelines are different for everybody, but it is a great program.
Yeah, our next intern after you that we already have lined up, he's going to start his internship and then plant after the internship or on the tail end of it. And so it'll be a little more helpful for him, hopefully. But this is great. So if you are a transitioning service member, meaning you plan to get out in the next 1 to 2 years, especially if you're part of one of our churches in the Praetorian Project, I would and you feel like you may be called to vocational ministry, like your next career is going to be in full-time ministry or part-time ministry. I would encourage you, I plead with you to start that conversation with your pastor now. And he and I can work through some of the details and the nuts and bolts because we're learning this as we go. But start that conversation with your pastor now. As you finish this video, send him a text, send him an email like, hey, dude, I need to talk about my military transition and what that could look like. Man, I appreciate you guys watching this one to the end. Thank you, Joshua, for your time. And I love you guys.